Okay, what's going on out there, ladies and gents? How are you people doing here? So today, I'm going to tell you people about what I miss about the old professional wrestling, not the new professional wrestling, but the old professional wrestling. Because as somebody who used to be a big professional wrestling fan, I used to be a big fan of WWE and TNA Impact. On a Monday night, it would be Monday Night Raw. Friday, it was SmackDown. Tuesday, it was ECW. So I got my weekly worth of entertainment, and the fact that they first of all got rid of ECW is complete bullcrap, because I really enjoyed ECW. It was one of my favorite things to watch growing up, especially in the in the later 2000s and the early 2010s. Well, 2011 is when I stopped watching professional wrestling, just because I got bored of it, and plus the storylines are absolute crap, if I'm being honest here. Like, am I the only one here who thinks the storylines today in professional wrestling are not as good as they used to be, like in the 90s and the early 2000s, especially 90s and 2000s? I feel like that those years were truly the golden era for wrestling, because 90s you had the WWF Raw is War, if you guys remember that. That's the type of professional wrestling that I miss, was the 90s, when you could see some actual action. That's the type of professional wrestling I wish they'd bring back, because this new era of wrestling has just become a joke. I'm talking about mainly WWE becoming a kids show. Like, honestly, dude, that stuff just, that's the reason when I realized how wrestling was going to fall, okay, how wrestling was going to be in decline, professional wrestling, because I feel like it's nothing but just a product. Or, I feel like that the only reason why WWE has become a kids show was, let's be honest, so that they can just milk the whole product. Because back then, they didn't just milk the whole product, they actually put out an effort into the storylines, while nowadays it's just, let's milk the whole thing and that's it. That's really what I feel like professional wrestling has become, especially with all these average storylines. Like, does anybody even get interest in professional wrestling anymore? Because I'm gonna tell you, I completely lost interest in that like 10 years ago. Even, like, yeah, I tune into some pay-per-view events now and then, but I don't really like pay attention to any of the WWE pay-per-views anymore like how I used to. And yes, there's AEW too, but to be honest, man, I don't know whether I should watch AEW or not. Honestly, I might tune into AEW. It depends, really. But it's just, if there's one thing that I miss about the professional wrestling, it would have to be mainly the WWF Raw is War 90s Attitude Era. That's the era of wrestling that I miss the most. And I think anybody that grew up in the 80s or the 90s, that grew up watching WWE probably misses that era too, just like how I do, because I'm a 97 guy. So I barely remember anything from the WWF days, but I did rewatch a lot of the episodes, and oh my goodness, like, wrestling back then was something special. Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, like, that's the type of era of professional wrestling I wish we could go back to, just those days, okay? Because this new era of WWE, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, ever since WWE became a kids show, I feel like I'm the only person here that has just completely lost interest in the product. Same with TNA. I hardly ever watch professional wrestling anymore. It's just my passion for professional wrestling after 2011 has just kind of, gone out the window. So that's why I haven't watched professional wrestling yet, mainly because, just for them to get rid of ECW and WWF, the World Wrestling Federation, WCW, for them to get rid of all that is really lame and bullcrap. And I still don't understand why they got rid of it. Presumably, I imagine it's because, a bunch of parents were complaining about wrestling being too violent, blah, 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 blah. You know how it's like. They complain about it, and then, I guess WWE then started losing viewers. Then that probably explains why they became a kids show, because it's all just for money, okay? That's what really professional wrestling is about. It's just, back then, it was not just about them trying to milk the whole product. Back then, it was them, trying to actually put effort into creating a storyline to get the fans hooked, Degeneration X from, the 90s. That's what made professional wrestling interesting. Goldberg, Booker T, who else? I'm trying to think of somebody, Kevin Nash, aka Diesel back then. That's the type of professional wrestling I miss. You know, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, may he rest in peace. That's the professional era. That's like really the attitude or the era of professional wrestling. I wish we could go back to just those days. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, you know, those were the good times of wrestling, I feel like, especially like the 90s. Like, you know how it's like. You also had a Bret the Hitman Hart, so many great icons. You know, that was the true golden era of professional wrestling because ever since, you know, they got rid of the Raw is where the Attitude Era, WWF, ECW, I feel like that's kind of ruined professional wrestling, if I'm being honest here. So, yeah, honestly, if they could bring back those days of professional wrestling, that'd be great because, man, that era of wrestling was truly remarkable. I mean, you also had Sable, you also had, who else? I'm trying to think of somebody else from the Attitude Era. You had China as well. May she also rest in peace, China. I mean, just so many great memories from the Attitude Era. You know, you had Eddie Guerrero as well. May he also rest in peace. It's like, man, just so many great wrestlers back then, but now it's like but like nowadays, 20 years later, does anybody even care about professional wrestling anymore? Like, I want to know, are you still a professional wrestling fan or no? Because like me, in my case, for example, after, you know, the only time when I would ever maybe tune into professional wrestling more consistently more is if they brought back the, you know, Attitude Era Raws or the ECW days, you know, like when you had Tommy Dreamer, Bobby Lashley, Sabu. That was really one of the most entertaining things about wrestling too was ECW. And for them to get rid of ECW is complete bullcrap. So yeah, this is really what I miss about professional wrestling the most.